Hi, dancers. Welcome back. Today we are going to be interviewing Jess Spinner. She is a holistic health, nutrition, and lifestyle coach for dancers. And I'm so excited to be talking to her today because nutrition and fueling your body with the right things is so important and goes hand in hand with ballet injury prevention, which, as you guys all know, I'm all about. So, welcome, Jess. And I am so excited to ask you these questions. And I just want to start by hearing a little bit about you and what brought you into this realm of the dance world.
Yeah. Well, it's awesome to connect with you. I'm so thrilled. Thank you for having me. I danced, like a lot of people. I started young and I danced my whole life, and I went to college for dance and arts administration at Butler University, and then I danced professionally for just about 5 years. And all that time, pretty much starting in my teens, I really struggled with food and body image. And those challenges did not go away the entire time I was dancing. I do think well, now too, with more support, I see professionals being able to like get out of those mindsets that are established for them as young dancers. But for me, it unfortunately just persisted the whole time. And when I look back, there are certainly positive amazing moments in my dance journey, but also I tend to feel like there was a bit of a dark cloud the whole time because I always had this preoccupation with food in my body and thinking I was too big and thinking I should be thinner and trying to manipulate my food and investigate diets. And that is also what kind of got me to a point where I started to develop a healthy interest in it, but was not until after I was done dancing. And when it started to be a healthier pursuit, I kind of saw how damaging my previous mentality around all of it was. And so my big goal now is to really help dancers get to a healthy place while they're young and like while they're in their professional careers so that it doesn't have to be something that they take with them into the rest of their lives, essentially.
Yeah. And I can attest to that too, as somebody who always felt like my body wasn't quite right for the ballet world, but I had this huge heart for the ballet world. And it did end up leading to a lot of disordered eating habits for me, which I felt so connected when you said the dark cloud. And I was like, yeah, I felt that through my entire, and I feel like it even hit a little bit more, and you might be able to resonate with this too. When you have a baby and your body changes so rapidly, and it was kind of like it brought some of that back for me because it made
Mhm.
me remember, oh wow, like my body used to be here and now it's here. And so it can be almost like a lifelong journey of
Yeah.
rewiring your brain to say, hey, it's okay to eat normal.
Right. It really is. I had a similar experience. I felt so healed. And actually through pregnancy I was fine. Even when my mother came over one day and said, "Oh my God, you're huge." And I was like, basically in my mind, I was just like, I didn't even say it because I was like, there's no point. But I'm in my head, I'm like, Mom, like, is that the it's not helpful. It's not necessary. And I'm
No,
pregnant. So
no.
yeah, there's a human in there. I should be pretty big. But in the postpartum, that was the first time in a long time that I like was grappling with body image stuff again because it's
Yeah.
I think there's a lot that you don't expect in that phase that people
Oh,
don't
yeah.
talk about so much more now, luckily, like social media
I
and
feel like we could probably do an entire podcast on dancers coming back
yeah,
postpartum.
definitely,
We'll
definitely.
do another episode on that. That could
For
be a
sure.
future thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're totally right though. So much we do not expect. The first thing that I really wanted to talk about with you is the underfueling cascade, where we do not see dancers getting enough, fuel in their tank to actually prevent these injuries and even like some metabolic issues and hormonal imbalances that end up coming up, like just stuff like chronic fatigue, irregular periods, stress fractures, strains and sprains. And there is such a huge link between what I have seen as a practitioner and a lot of it connecting to the underfueling cascade. And I'd love to talk to you about that.
In some ways, it seems so common sense, but so
Yeah.
much. under eating and undernourishing is normalized in the dance world, that dancers don't realize what they're doing to themselves, I think, in a lot of cases. I actually had a conversation with a teenage dancer and a mother this week where I just, kind of in passing was like, and it's going to help with injury prevention when you're making sure that you're fueling adequately. And this young person said to me, "How?" And I was like, "Oh, wow."
Mm,
Like, I guess when I think back, I'm sure I really didn't make that connection as a young dancer
mm-mm.
either. But if you're not, like you said, if you're not putting enough fuel in the tank, you're going to have a really hard time getting all of the nutrients that you need in order to maintain healthy bones and to maintain healthy hormones, which are both so deeply connected to our body's functioning at an optimal level, and also bone health, obviously preventing injury there. I will often talk to dancers about, without numbers, because I don't even think you need it, but just about like basal metabolic rate and the concept of the energy that your body needs simply to exist and function. Because they'll be like, if I'm not dancing, like I shouldn't need that much food. And I'm like, to the contrary, right? Like your body, just to do all the things it has to do to keep you alive, needs quite a lot of energy. And then you're dancing X amount 6 days a week on top of that, like you need a lot of fuel. And you know, when we're not fueling adequately, it impacts our brain and cognitive function, and therefore we start to, lose focus in class and do like weird compensating things in the way we're doing things physically. That can also lend itself to injury as well. And so it's just like all so connected. And I really think just like putting their focus on seeing that from a young age is really helpful.
Yeah. And even something that I struggle with personally is I am not big on like eating meat throughout the day. I have
Mhm.
an issue with that. And I like meat, it's fine. It's just I struggle with that. So I have to remind myself of the concept of protein sparing
Yes.
because if I'm not actually getting enough protein in my body, then my body is going to go looking for it in different places. And often it's going to pull from your muscles, and then you're going to put yourself at more risk for those ligamentous injuries and
Mhm.
strains, tears, tendonitis, all those things. Everything kind of just elevates if you're not giving yourself enough protein.
Mhm.
Yeah. So here, and you just talked about this, but the not feeling hungry concept. And you talked about, just your body has basic functions it carries out, like breathing and digestion and, your heart beating and pumping blood through your body. But what do you talk to, or how do you explain to a dancer who just is like, I just don't feel hungry, so I don't feel any reason to eat, or I forget to eat because I don't feel hungry? Um, what are some things that you usually go through with these dancers and why it's not a good reason to skip meals?
Yeah. Well, right. It is the impact of adrenaline and cortisol and hunger hormones like ghrelin and peptide YY that have this impact on um, suppressing our hunger. When I explain it to dancers, I'll usually just say, like your brain and body are communicating with one another. And when you dance, obviously you need lots of blood in your arms and legs in order to like do all the movement that you're doing. And so the blood has to be diverted away from your digestive system. So your body is like, we can't be hungry now because we need this blood out here in our arms and legs. We can't bring it back to the stomach right now. So we have to kind of dampen that need and suppress that hunger or suppress that energy need. So it has to be, and the concept is like practical hunger or proactive eating, where you have to develop an awareness of like what your timeline of foods is looking like, what time you eat breakfast, and then what time you start dancing, and then what time you have a lunch break or snack opportunities, and actually proactively take those opportunities to eat food instead of saying like, well, I'm not hungry, because then we can go, 6 or 8 hours feeling like we're not hungry. And then for most of us, at some point, it like hits in like a big way. And then sometimes that's when dancers get into patterns of significantly undereating. And then I struggled with this. And I know a lot of my clients have gotten into patterns of overeating or even binge eating, where, we
Mhm.
feel kind of out of control, and then that impacts self-worth and food relationship in ways that just, again, can have this domino effect where we just don't feel great about ourselves and our approach to food in general. So when you can eat proactively, you never have those extremes in the same way. It's much more balanced and calm, and you can make your food choices a bit more logically instead of feeling, out of control, which dancers, I think, particularly don't like that feeling.
No, definitely not. And I kind of talked about this in another podcast, but in general, I think that as dancers, because we are such perfectionists, we do kind of tend to run a little bit on the higher levels with like cortisol. And
Yeah,
so you just mentioned like when the cortisol is pumping through your body, you're not going to feel the effects of hunger as much. So that's not an indicator always to say, hey, I'm not going to eat right now, because you could just be stressed
definitely.
and your body actually needs the fuel. I love that, being intentional about how you're gonna, essentially plan out your diet day. That's a great. So we obviously both have felt the effects of the kind of toxic diet culture in the ballet world. And as a coach, how do you help dancers shift this mindset from the eating for aesthetics to eating for your performance and actually embracing the side of injury prevention? I mean, yeah, we can talk about like the science of it all day long and like it makes sense to you and I, but some people are just kind of like, as soon as you start talking about all of the real, sciencey stuff, they kind of tune out. So
Right.
I guess, how do you really bring those two worlds together to make that connection with somebody who's just really not getting the science part of things?
Yeah. I always ask dancers, how do you want to feel in your dancing when they're
Oh,
hyper fixated on how they think they should look, or how even sometimes teachers are telling them they should look. And it's a practice, right? And I'll say this with every mindset shift that I try and support, is that rarely, sometimes we have what feels like an aha moment or a light bulb moment. Sure, we're like it all kind of clicks, but most of the time it's a slow build, and it's a practice of consistently coming back to the mentality of, how do I want to feel in my dancing? And most dancers will say, I want to feel strong and energized. And
yeah,
you don't get to those places by depleting yourself or not eating enough. To be
right.
strong and energized in dance, you have to be eating enough fuel, and you have to be eating a variety of foods, and you have to cover your macronutrient bases and eat protein, carbs, and fat, right? And it's also helping them fight against the messages that they may have received, whether it's from teachers directly, teachers generally making comments, social media things telling us we should cut or reduce certain things, and
Yeah.
fighting against that and being like, I've, especially in the last year, and this is because it's trending. Okay. But I've had so
Sure.
many dancers tell me, oh, well, my teacher told us, leading up to the show, we should cut back on carbs. And I'm
Yep.
like, it's like the opposite, really, of what we should be doing. If you would like to have energy and focus and awareness in this performance, then no, we don't want to do that. And so, it is like making sure that they're aware of the unhelpful and untrue messages that they're receiving, and using, yeah, using the science just to the degree that it's helpful for a person to kind of connect
Yeah.
with. Okay, but really, what does your body need to have energy, right? And it's carbs.
Yeah.
That's our body's preferred source of energy. And helping them to also, I think it helps a lot when they actually experience it. Like, I'll have a
Yeah.
dancer whose breakfast is like all protein. I'll say like, let's just add a piece of toast and tell me how you feel, or like add some oatmeal and tell me how it feels. And every time, I can say 100% of the time. I'm thinking over 10 years, I can't think of a time when they were like, nah, it didn't really help. 100% of the time they come back and they say, I felt so much better. I felt so much more energized through my whole day. Like, definitely through
Yeah.
the first part, and then actually through my whole day. It's like, yeah, we have to sometimes experience that to believe it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that was a great thing that you brought up about carbs in general, because I think so many people, when they hear carbohydrates, they think of things like pasta, bread, chips, things that are considered almost, junk food. And so we almost lump that into a category when that's not all that carbohydrates are.
Right.
So would you like to, I don't know, give like kind of a brief overview of what a carbohydrate actually is? Because that I think
Yeah.
would be helpful.
Yeah. From a food perspective, this is one of the things I always say in a workshop, right? Like, because I can rattle off some carbs, right? Potatoes, fruit, you get them from starchy vegetables. Yes, whole grain toasts and oatmeals, legumes, and beans are a source of carbs as well, and also decent sources of protein in both cases. Your body is going to use them, turn them into sugar, which is why, again, like we when we hear about simpler sugars, we're like, oh no, but it's bad. But no, this is what
Yeah.
your body needs for energy. Simple carbs do have a place as well. But, I think that that's one of the things I say in workshops always is like, if you want a really exhaustive list of carbs, that's one of the things I feel like you can actually quite safely Google, like get a list of
Yeah.
carbs for yourself. And
Right.
and if you're struggling to make or trust that you're making complete meals, grab a list of protein, carbs, and fat and know that like, yes, you want to have all of these at most meals and pick and choose the ones that appeal to you and you'll find your balance. Obviously with supportive nutrition professionals if that's what you feel like you need as well. But yeah, it's the sugar in all its forms and it's
Yeah.
not all bad.
It's not all bad and it's not junk food. Like,
No,
oh, it's always junk food. Yeah. And I
right,
think that's what a lot of people think. Yeah, I'm just going to remove all the carbs from my diet and then I'll be perfect. Right?
right.
No.
Yeah,
That is not going to be a good effect on your body.
no.
So, as a PTA myself and as a personal trainer, I've obviously worked with a lot of dancers on tissue healing, strengthening, corrective training to retrain, the neuromuscular system and get them healthy again. But as a nutrition coach, how do you support that healing process? Like if you've got a dancer who is maybe working with me and working through a tendinous injury, how would you go ahead and collaborate with that healing process of, say, a strain or tendonitis?
Yeah. So I think that especially if there's an injury where a dancer's dancing hours are limited, they again have this tendency to say, well, I should be eating less. And
Hmm.
so encouraging them to see the nutrient benefit of eating enough food to the healing process and making sure that they're staying consistent with meals and snacks even through that process where they may not be dancing as much as they normally would. I feel like that's one of the biggest things and the accountability with that. And most dancers are quite, you know, I imagine this would be your experience. Like when you give them a plan, they're going to stick to it because like they want
Yeah.
to improve and get better. Um,
Yep.
that's where some of the type A perfectionists can help is in injury recovery, like
Yeah.
doing what is prescribed to them. But sometimes it's a matter of helping them keep those things going from a schedule perspective and supporting them to get, all of the exercise plans into their days that sometimes younger dancers are still sitting in dance classes for many hours and aren't necessarily being given the opportunity to do PT exercises during that period of time. So making
Yeah.
sure that they do find the time to do those things. Um, Eating adequately. Sometimes I'll have a dancer who's going through injury recovery and they'll have a nutrition plan prescribed by a registered dietitian. And so then my role would be
Mhm.
helping them make sure that they actually implement all of those things and find creative ways to get them in, again, with the schedule challenges and limitations at
Yeah.
times. How can we make this an easier food to consume, smoothies, like how so you can eat throughout class, school classes, or dance classes. So it's just creating more ease around it, I think, and
Yeah,
giving them the
yeah.
support to make it not feel overwhelming. There's usually the mental component as well, where they struggle with the timeline, because I say, as you know too, right? Like timelines are estimates and guesses, and
Yep, they
they're going to
they
change
fluctuate.
and
Everybody's
fluctuate.
body feels differently.
Right.
Yeah,
So you do all that you can, and then you have to be flexible and understand that the timeline may change. So sometimes there's support with the mental component of that as well.
absolutely. Yeah. Now, I would love to hear a little bit about what you think about the anti-inflammatory diet trends that have come out. And I know a lot of the food that we consume in our body, they can be either pro-inflammatory or anti-inflammatory. And if you've done any research or connection into any kind of chronic recurring inflammatory conditions, obviously, in physical therapy or in training, we're trying to reduce the inflammation so that, restore range of motion, restore movement, restore function, but how diet connects with those goals as well, with like even chronic aches and pains.
Yeah. So I'm going to preface this by saying packaged food for most dancers is going to be part of the plan, right? Because there's so much limited schedule going on that like they do need quick and packaged options at times. What comes into play when it comes to inflammation is that, many packaged foods will have high omega-6 ingredients and some of the vegetable oils that are very high in omega-6s. And omega-3s are our more anti-inflammatory fats. But really, it is the ratio of those two that has the biggest impact on inflammation. And when people generally eat lots of packaged foods, the ratio of omega-6s to 3s might be something like 20 to 1, whereas the ideal ratio would be more like 3 to 1 or 1 to 1. I don't think most dancers, even though like they know that they can and do need some packaged foods, I don't imagine that for the most part they're in the 20 to 1 range. But I think building awareness around that and knowing how much you're using packaged foods and which of the foods you consume do have just like those added in oils that are higher in omega-6s is important, because it really may have an impact on how your
Yeah,
body's responding to inflammation. Certainly, you can consume additional omega-3s in order to benefit your body and the anti-inflammatory effect. So things like salmon and walnuts, flax seeds, tuna are all, good sources of omega-3s. Walnuts, did I say that? Yeah,
yeah,
walnuts. Yeah.
yeah,
And then, other anti-inflammatory herbs and other foods like turmeric and garlic, uh, flavonoids that you would find in things like cocoa and some teas and fruits and vegetables, right? Like, so, it's again awareness. I think without obsession is the most important part for dancers, is just like have that awareness without it being something that you're thinking about nonstop, or telling yourself I can never consume a fat that's high in omega-6s, right? Because realistically, you probably will at some point be consuming those. And it's the 1 to 1 ratio that we really want to aim towards. So I think it's just the awareness of that.
yeah. That's great. Yeah, and I think that obsessing over anything really doesn't help us, does it? You've got
Yeah.
to have a balance.
Yeah.
And on that note, what do you think is the most damaging nutrition myth that we have received as dancers that really that you would love to shed some truth on in myth bust?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go back to what I said about the carbs, because that really is trending right now. And there's a
Yeah,
lot of, dietary advice that's like basically just labeling, like you said, all carbs as bad. And sure, like there are some carbs that are less optimal sources perhaps of energy, but there's a lot of really healthy carbs. Carbs are our body's preferred source of energy. Um, helps maintain blood sugar, right? You get lots of fiber from carbs, which aids in digestion. Sometimes dancers complain about bloating, and a lot of the
Mm,
time it's because they're not eating all macronutrients consistently, and or they're not
mm,
they're just generally not eating consistently. And your stomach is a muscle. If it doesn't get the exercise, it doesn't work as well, and your digestion doesn't work as well, so you will get bloated more often, right? So like, it's eating
yeah.
consistently, eating carbs consistently so your body knows how to digest them well, and giving yourself the energy that you need. Carbs should make up more than half of a dancer's diet. It's a
Yeah.
lot. It should be a lot of your food. And if you're cutting them out, I think what happens too is initially you might feel more energized. I've had dancers eating very high fat and protein diets who say, I just feel so much more energized. And you may feel that way for a while, but then your body does start to compensate in other ways that are not helpful for your muscle repair and recovery and building muscle strength. So, it is important to actually familiarize yourself with the way these foods work in our bodies and what they do for us, and eat the carbs.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting that some people initially feel that elevated energy and
Mhm.
then because I think I've gone through that myself even
Yeah.
in my dieting. So if there is a dancer listening to this podcast right now, what's one actionable takeaway that you would say they can do right now to just start working on a healthier diet and lifestyle as a dancer?
Yeah. Yeah. Take 10 minutes and write down what the timing of your meals and snacks looks like on a given day, or on most days, because most of us are pretty consistent with that, right? It's like, oh, I wake up and I eat breakfast, or I don't eat breakfast, and then I have this and whatever. Like, food timing for most of us tends to be relatively consistent. And there's a lot of missed opportunities for dancers, especially with eating enough food in the morning. And then that impacts everything else going forward. When you look at the timing of your meals, try to get your food intake happening every 2 to 4 hours so that your body is getting consistent energy and fuel. If you let it go more than 5 hours between meals, that's when most of us get hangry and like, not nice to be around. And like, I really, now that I'm so in touch with these things, I'm so aware of that I'll be like, I know I have like blind hanger in my eyes, and I just don't talk to anyone until I get some food, because like, it's real. I try not to do it, because I am so aware now. But you got to be aware of that. And I would just write it down, and you might notice like, oh wow, it's 6 hours between breakfast and lunch, and I don't usually eat a snack. And if dancers are in school, sometimes they have a lunch break at 11 a.m. and then they start dancing at 4, and they don't eat anything between 11 and 4, and then they dance for 2 hours or 3 hours,
Yeah.
and it's like, we have to look for where those opportunities are to have a meal or a snack that your body really needs, and just plan for it.
Wow. Wow. That is great advice. And I know what I'm going to be doing later.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. I love that.
Cheers.
Um, so if someone wants to get a hold of you, work with you, and really dive into making sure that their diet is healthy and that they're really supported in their whole health and nutrition and their healing, how can they go about getting in touch with you, Jeff?
Yeah, so my handles are pretty consistent across the board. My website is thewholedancer.com. On there, you'll see a contact link where you can get in touch. You can also just email me directly, jess@thewholedancer.com.
Scroll down below and grab those links, send you a message on Instagram or your email and get a hold of you so they can start diving into all these wonderful, healthy things.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Veronica.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. I really appreciate everything that you've shared with us today. I know that I've learned a lot from what you've had to share with us. And I hope that all of the other dancers who are listening to this on replay are getting something to really walk away and feel more empowered about their diet and not eating for the aesthetic, but eating for that performance and that function, just like you said.
Absolutely.